fellow biologist, a fellow scholar, a fellow academic, a fellow connoisseur of the sciences and culture. What a marvelous conversation we're about to have. Right? I am a professional medical biologist, and you are factually incorrect. Humans have primarily two sexes, and other variations are irregularities. Notice they were careful to use the word primarily, but every culture on Earth assigns sex based on phenotype. We don't assign it based on, genetic testing. We don't assign it based on freaking karyotype. We assign it based on phenotype, right? That's the reality of how sex is assigned, right? I'm from Australia, and in Australia we recognize that sex is changeable, right? We even have free sex categories on birth certificates. So you can be F, M, or X, and that's sex, not gender. So sex is phenotypical, and to say that, a phenotype is a binary, well, that's like saying there are only two hair colors, right? There is only black hair and blonde hair, and any other hair colors are simply irregularities. Intersex conditions are as common as ginger hair. Now, think about that, right? How many ginger-haired people have you met? How many ginger people have you talked to, right? The only difference is you can see hair color. You can't always see sex. I think you might be confusing gender and sex, because sex is most definitely based on someone's genotype. If you indeed meant sex, well then I'm afraid you're not being taught well in your field of study. I mean, I don't really get how they could think I'm talking about gender and not sex, when I'm literally talking about, assignment, and saying assignment is based on, phenotype, right? Yeah, well, maybe they think you're part of the fucking ideological white mob, right? You're just looking for an excuse to break into their bathroom. Yes, well, phenotype is biological, so is that sex or gender? Right? Keep reading. Australia is hardly the world's epicenter of knowledge and discovery for the medical sciences, so I'm not entirely surprised something so wrong is taught. I mean, that doesn't really sound like a thing a medical biologist would say, Well, fuck Australia. It's a shithole, innit? Don't know nothing. From Australia. Never even heard of it. Can't even fucking find it on a map. Yes, well, Australians are pretty much English rednecks, are they not? Fucking, you talking shit about my country, eh? Talking shit about Australia? I'm sorry, I can't, it's too silly. I don't know why you're making me do this fucking, I thought it was pretty funny when we, thought of it. Sex is very much a product of genotype due to a number of factors, one of which being the numerous genetic diseases that primarily affect either males or females. Okay, genotype is one factor that determines sex. It's not the only factor, and we definitely don't assign people based on genotype. Yeah, and to fucking say, that diseases are what determine whether you're male or female, that's like saying, fucking heart disease makes you male, right? Fucking diabetes makes you fat. It doesn't make fucking sense, right? That doesn't make sense. You can talk about risk factors, right, of minority groups or fucking, different risk factors that might vary depending on your, phenotypical sex, but that's phenotype, right? That's not fucking genotype. If you want to talk about X-linked inheritance, that's fucking separate. Another factor is also the ability for females to produce egg cells, which males cannot do, and males producing sperm cells, which females cannot do. I mean, you can't conflate fertility and sex, right? Fertility is also a freaking spectrum, so if you're gonna conflate fertility and sex, you can't really be a binarist, can you? You can fertilize my binary sex. We're not gonna go there. We're not gonna freaking go there. Yes, abnormal variations exist with multiple X or Y chromosomes who have the ability to produce egg and sperm cells. I can't see how, they work in medicine, because they should really understand, that karyotype, the karyotypic variations that exist, like triple X, or, XXY Klinefelter syndrome or single X Turner syndrome, they are not about gametes. They're primarily not about freaking gametes. There's lots of other, cascading effects that can happen, in the development of sex phenotype. And not everyone with those chromosomal abnormalities even freaking knows, right? They don't even know. Unless, you're symptomatic, you don't go get your chromosomes checked, do you? Unless you have something that is wrong with you, why would you test your chromosomes? Right? There are cases of freaking Y syndrome women, who are born with freaking XY karyotype, right? Who have had pregnancies, and they found out that they had, abnormal karyotypes when their daughters got freaking tested, when their daughters, presented as being infertile. They had no idea, Medical literature is full of these variations, and to be like, it's just abnormal, let's ignore it, it's not something a scientist should do. Actually being less than 1% makes it not worth changing the established global system over. The most cited figure for, the number of people whose natural variations don't fit into a strict, sex binary is 1.7, right? That's the most cited number. Now, in medicine, the freaking alpha value that is used to determine statistical significance is 0.01. That's, the bare minimum you should be using when talking about statistical significance. I would not want to go to a doctor that thought that a 1 in 100 chance of something happening was irrelevant. If they thought a 1 in 1,000, chance of something happening was irrelevant, I would not want to go to that doctor. Would you want to go to that doctor? Yeah, I would. It would be fun, right? Fuck yeah, get lucky. You might get lucky. I mean, but we share 98% of our fucking 98.8% of our DNA with fucking chimpanzees. What's a fucking 1.2% matter, right? What's a fucking 1.2% matter? Yeah, it's a 1.2% matter. We'd be fucking, rolling around on our fists. I'm sure the medical students in Australia will face that reality when innocent people are harmed due to the absolute negligence of medical teachings in there. My only hope is that actual science reaches the minds of those fools before it's too late. I don't really see how, recognition of diversity causes harm, right? Because the reason, we have a phenotypic understanding of sex, right? The reason why we have, exon birth certificates and transitioning for freaking trans people is because those are the best health outcomes, right? Those have the best outcomes, right? And it doesn't make sense for the vast majority of people to think of sex as karyotypical, right? It makes sense to think of it as phenotype because, when a person comes into a fucking doctor's office, the size of their organs, their lung capacity, the adipose tissue, the freaking muscle volume, that is phenotype. That is not karyotype, right? And the only time, you might have, where karyotype has significance, inheritance of those genetic diseases, but that is separate to sex. In Australia, especially, we make it a point to fucking account for minority groups, right? Because we have, a native population that have, increased risk factors, and we can't just be like one size fits all, Yeah, well, fucking, cis white men don't get sick, do they? Toughen up, princess. Deal with your 1% yourself. Trust me, I wish I could do all these things in changing sexes and living the sex we want. Well, good news, you can. You can change your sex, right? You can change your hormones, you can change your freaking tissue and organs. You can change whether your, playful bits are on the inside or the outside. There's even uterus transplants, right? In some countries, it's very new for like the past, 10 years or so. And so if you're really, worried about fertility, that's a thing, right? And, of course, people fucking freeze sperm and eggs all the time. So even if, even someone without genitals can still have a fucking child, right? It's insulting that people are just okay with accepting this budget half-baked current stuff rather than working towards actually making the real technology possible enough. Oh, you think this stuff is fucking cheap, right? You know how much it costs to look this good? But seriously, anything about sex that you can see, you can change, right? Why would you want to change anything else, right? Fucking chromosomes, Right? What fucking difference does that make? Right? If you changed your chromosomes right fucking now, you'd be exactly the fucking same. You still look the fucking same. You still smell the fucking same. You still taste the fucking same. Right? It's like, if you made a fucking cake, right? And the recipe said fucking it's a banana cake, right? And then you swapped out the bananas for chocolate, right? It's no longer a fucking banana cake, is it? It's a chocolate cake, right? You wouldn't say, oh no, because the original recipe said bananas, therefore it's a banana cake that fucking looks, smells, tastes, and, fucking behaves like chocolate cake. You wouldn't say that, would you? Right? You say, no, this is a fucking chocolate cake. You lied. There are no bananas. Yeah, I mean, that's right, if you change the chromosomes right now, it's like changing the recipe after the cake is fucking made, like, hormones are what determine which fucking, sex-specific genes get transcribed, after fucking puberty. Once, you've gone through fetal development, even during fetal development, it's still hormones that determine, it's androgens, androgen receptor sensitivity, androgen transcription factors, and to be like fucking, your chromosomes determine your sex, well, most people don't have any fucking clue what their chromosomes are, do they? How many of you have ever fucking, had your chromosomes tested? How many of you have ever seen your fucking chromosomes? You have no idea, right? So how can you possibly know what fucking sex you are? Oh, guess what? You guess it based on freaking phenotype. Oh my god, Millie, you're getting a bit too sassy. Oh, yeah, I know, it's just, I feel a bit worked up. I need to sit down. Oh god. So much of what you said was fundamentally wrong and ideally captured in a nonsensical worldview ruled by popular trends. Australia certainly does not punch well above anything, except maybe ground level. I mean, fair point, Australia is pretty flat geographically. I mean, we have a relatively small population of, 30 million people, right? 0.3% of the world's population. Tiny number, so tiny you might be tempted to ignore it, right? But our research and fucking our research output and, our innovations and discoveries, right? Those are disproportional to our small population, right? We have a disproportional impact on, global scientific research. We have freaking, world-class hospitals, world-class education, national investment in science and medicine and research, and you can't just dismiss a whole country because you disagree with someone who comes from there. I'm sorry you are so ideologically lost that you cannot see the truth. I think, if you want to change someone's mind, it's better to, present evidence. It's not enough to be like, you're wrong, I believe this is true, you're wrong. You have to support your beliefs with evidence, and when someone gives evidence that contradicts you, you can't just be like, oh, well, I don't believe that, it doesn't count. You very clearly appear to be someone who is possibly in their first years of any medical study, so I hope you'll learn one day. Until then, have a good day. I mean, at least it ended with a polite note, which kind of, doesn't really, diminish the undermining and, bad-mouthing my country, but it doesn't really reveal anything about me. It doesn't reveal anything about my educational level. I mean, if anything, come on. What it really shows is that, I'm challenging something that they believe to be fundamental. Something that they believe that no evidence can make them change their mind, right? Fucking hysterical, Millie. I like it. Get me excited. Oh, stop teasing me, okay? I mean, yeah, I was expecting you to get all fucking emotional and passionate. Yeah, real fucking triggered, aren't you? Real triggered. Oh, stop it. Oh, sorry, Liberty. I don't know, okay? I don't fucking know. All I know is it's too fucking hot and sweaty.